Yo, 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 Big Kish back up in here. We about to go over DJ Akademiks and Joe Budden's. What's their bias? Is DJ Akademiks glazing, or is he on both sides? Is he on both sides? Is he on the side of Kendrick and Drake? Is Joe Budden's on the side of Kendrick and Drake, or is Joe Budden's on Kendrick's side and not Drake's? Is DJ Akademiks on Drake's side and not Kendrick's? What it is? What y'all think, man? Y'all write in the comment section. What's going on here? All right, let's see. Let's check this out, y'all. Y'all know I don't like holding y'all. Let's get it.
In rap, the rest of y'all don't matter. It's Drake, Aubrey, Drizzy Drake, and Drizzy Marley. The rest of y'all don't matter.
I'm just not a fan of the Drake that Kendrick mutilated. What that person stands for and represents is the exact opposite of what I stand for and represent. You're not like us.
What about the struggles that he might have experienced coming from an actor, trying to be a rapper, nobody probably taking him serious, trying to figure himself out? What about those struggles?
I think that's mythical. I think that every artist that comes in the culture has to make up some sob story about where they came from and how rough it was.
5 you smoking on Kendrick, cause my top 5 is Drake.
If we broke it all, then you know it wasn't pointless. You gotta watch things.
Hey, look, that's why Dot was like, I make music that electrify him. You make music that pacify him, because he was knocked out.
It's called Sicko Road. Track 3. Yeah.
So guys, there seems to be a growing problem in hip-hop of media bias, where basically the public figures who report the news, who comment on what's hot and what's not within the culture, are doing so and push narratives that basically drive the artists who they like and who they want to see win towards a more positive light, and they do the exact opposite for the artists that they want to see lose. Right. And this has come to the forefront now just because the two biggest journalists / rap analysts / culture
Ak used to be mad slim back then. He been sitting at that computer table too long. He been eating them groceries too much. What?
Commentators, like whatever title you want to give them, Joe Budden and Akademiks, they're at the forefront of hip-hop media right now. They were basically the referees in the whole Kendrick and Drake battle. If you paid close attention, a lot of times Kendrick would specifically drop songs at the same time that Akademiks was on stream, and Drake actually sent Akademiks the first diss track he released, Push-Ups, during an Akademiks stream, and he had a sample of Akademiks' voice in the track where Akademiks was basically yelling at Kendrick, asking him, you know, what top 5 he thinks he's smoking on, because his top 5 is just Drake. And on the flip side, Joe Budden, who obviously came from a much more traditional hip-hop background.
And that's why Akademiks been glazing like that. He don't even like when people listen to Kendrick.
I mean, he was a rapper back in the day. He's extremely against using ghostwriters for his own personal work and has been a strong advocate for Kendrick in this entire battle. Basically dancing on Drake's grave when Not Like Us came out. His whole entire podcast, they were all dancing in celebration of this monstrous W that Kendrick Lamar took. And funny enough, Akademiks, who is a strong advocate for Drake throughout this entire battle, he actually got a mention from Kendrick on one of his tracks where Kendrick rapped that someone is compromised, he could smell the vibes on Ak, basically saying that Akademiks is compromised and has an extreme bias towards Drake and his team and is trying to push a negative narrative about Kendrick. Meanwhile, Joe Budden, who was actively rooting for Kendrick throughout this entire battle, or if it wasn't active, I mean, it was definitely obvious that he had a favorite in this entire thing, especially given his past relationship with Drake, which we will touch on in this video, because it is a huge factor in his bias within this entire thing, if you want to deem it as bias. So yeah, he was Team Kendrick, but he actually got a shout out from Drake on one of his tracks where Drake rapped, before Kendrick even put out Not Like Us and called Drake a PDF file, Drake actually used Tupac AI vocals, pretending like he was Tupac talking to Kendrick on a diss track where he was basically saying that Kendrick should rap about Drake liking young girls because he heard that on the Joe Budden podcast. So I say all that to say these guys had an obvious involvement in this entire beef. Akademiks was mentioned by Kendrick and was obviously rooting for Drake, and Joe Budden was definitely rooting for Kendrick and actually got a mention from Drake. So yeah, these guys were at the forefront of this entire beef, and you've got to ask yourself the question, when such powerful voices within the culture have such an obvious favorite or bias when it comes to how they report the entire thing, is that a problem within media and how we consume content in general? I mean, we see this everywhere.
Yeah, it ain't used to be like that. You know what I'm saying? Usually people have an unbiased opinion back then, I know. But I don't remember, big personalities having like a strong bias for the person that they like. You know what I mean? They usually just keep it unbiased.
It's not just within hip-hop, right? CNN reports on Trump in a way more negative light than Fox will report on Trump, and vice versa. Fox News will, as Drake would put it, come around and let their bowels loose on the left and liberals, and CNN does the same thing to Republicans on the right side. And it's the same thing here, right? In hip-hop media, you're going to speak positively on the side that aligns with your pockets or just the music that you appreciate more, right? We all know Akademiks is like the number one
I
Drake
heard
fan,
what he said.
and he's done everything in his power to try and defend anything that comes out of this beef to justify the loss that Drake took. Just as recent as last week, he was reporting on Kendrick's pop-out show, and basically a day before the show, he had some guy on his stream who was trying to expose Kendrick for buying fake streams for his hit song Not Like Us. And after the show, Akademiks was trying to downplay the moment or the impact of the show by saying that, Drake hosts OVO Fest every single year, brings out tons of artists. We never show him love for doing so. And Drake also puts on a lot of young artists by giving them features before they blow up, which is not something Kendrick necessarily does as often. But yet, Kendrick does this one show and we're all praising him. Really just overlooking the fact that Kendrick did that show for his city, bring his city together, to unify them, to uplift them, and to celebrate the victory that they have, with Kendrick's West Coast banger, Not Like Us, being at the top of the charts. And he was biased throughout this entire beef. When Drake dropped Push-Ups, Akademiks was celebrating like he just won the lottery. He was counting down every single day after Drake released that song until Kendrick put out Euphoria. He was acting like Kendrick was on the clock. He was making it seem like if Kendrick didn't put out a diss track within just a couple days after Drake released Push-Ups, that Kendrick was done. He was really trying to push that narrative that Kendrick was scared to drop. And once Euphoria dropped, he actually posted Akademiks. He tweeted out day 17 of Kendrick not dropping anything. And then boom, Kendrick dropped Euphoria. And ever since then, he's just been on damage control, trying to make it seem like Drake did not take the type of loss that he took. When Drake dropped Family Matters, Akademiks was dancing, going crazy, and 30 minutes later, Kendrick drops Meet the Grams, and Akademiks' entire mood changes, and instead of actually focusing on the original...
His mood be changing, like, ugh. Matter of fact, he be letting you know, like, nah, Drake is my GOAT. I need my GOAT to win. My GOAT. Bro, Charlamagne the God told him, bro, don't be going down there. Hey, you gonna fall right along with Drake too. But I don't know, DJ Akademiks, he probably don't think he could because he do that streaming stuff. You know what I mean?
Personality of a diss track like that, or the scathiness of the bars, how Kendrick is talking to each one of Drake's family members directly, and then talking to Drake himself, telling him to look.
I don't think streamers be getting canceled, bro. I don't think you really could cancel a streamer for real. Be honest with you.
In the mirror at the horrible person that he is, instead of admiring how deep and dark and scathing that diss track was.
Him. Little Drake, boy. Little Drake. Yo, he got a mustache just like his father.
Akademiks instead went on damage control and just tried to focus on the fact that Kendrick was talking about a fake daughter that Drake didn't actually have. Then after Kendrick comes back with Not Like Us, Akademiks is trying his hardest not to vibe to the song as he's reacting to it. Like we all know, if Drake put out that same track, Akademiks would be jumping out of his seat, Henny would be flying everywhere, he'd be going crazy.
Oh, they started off with they try to put him in a certain category. Damn, they look like they don't even want to be there. Look, they look like, especially he look like he don't want to be there. Who's this?
Crazy, the same way he was when Family Matters dropped, but instead he gave a much more biased reaction. And then Drake drops The Heart Part 6, and before everyone pretty much established that that song was a terrible attempt at Drake trying to address and defend himself against the horrible allegations that were made against him of him being a PDF file, before everyone kind of unanimously established that that song was a terrible reaction to Not Like Us, Akademiks was actually praising it. If you go back and watch his initial reaction to the song, he was acting like this is exactly the right move Drake needed to make, and he was really trying to act like this was a solid chess move, putting Kendrick back on the clock. Then we get some reference tracks from Drake's ghostwriters, and Akademiks goes on Joe Budden's podcast and basically says, You know, it doesn't really matter when Drake has a ghostwriter for his R&B records, but he would care if a track like Mob Ties was written by someone else. And then funny enough, just a week later, a reference track for Mob Ties leaks. And it just gets harder and harder for Akademiks to try and defend Drake, the extent that he is, and painting Drake in this light.
Ain't that much glazing in the world, bruh. Ain't that much glazing in the world. He just keep getting pushed into a corner. Okay, now he got ghostwriters. He got reference tracks. What you gonna say now?
Where he has not taken a single L. And I mean, look, it's fine to pick a side, obviously, right? If Drake is your favorite artist, that's cool. I mean, like, my favorite artist is Lil Wayne. I grew up listening to Lil Wayne. He's the GOAT, in my opinion. Like, if he was taking the type of L's Drake is taking today, it'd be sad to see, and I would obviously try to defend his legacy as best as I could, but I'd accept the truth, and I think we get much better takes, reactions, and just content overall from Akademiks if there wasn't that extreme bias towards one side. If he was able to react fairly to the diss tracks coming from both sides, and his opinion wasn't as skewed, his content would just be better. He does a great job at breaking down tracks and breaking down the meaning behind what goes on in the industry and what these artists are basically saying subliminally in these tracks. But when that bias comes out, like Kendrick said, it just compromises the integrity and the value and the credibility of the content and information that we get from him. Joe Budden made a great point when Akademiks brought that guy on his stream to basically expose Kendrick for faking streams. That guy was revealing a lot of interesting information, whether it was true or not. It was cool to see him basically do a live demonstration of how he could flood an Instagram account with a bunch of fake likes and fake followers. And it was interesting to hear him give that insider information on how the industry and how Spotify pays for fake streams to basically boost artists. All that information is very interesting, but again, because of his extreme Drake bias, you got to take everything he says with a grain of salt, and it really ruins the integrity of what he's saying in an era where there's AI diss tracks coming out. We don't know what's real and what's not. And then the media on top of that is so biased in their portrayal of the entire beef, of the coverage of the actual genre. It's hard to get an objective opinion on anything. And the same is true for the other side, right? So Joe Budden, again, before he was a podcaster and probably the most influential voice in hip hop media, he was actually a rapper. And in 2016, when he was first starting his podcast, him and Drake initiated this back and forth because he was heavily critical on Drake's album Views, which I agree with at the time it came out. It was a big dip in quality.
No, Joe Budden's Drake. Joe Budden's was Drake was a huge Joe Budden's fan. Drake was a huge Joe Budden's fan. And Joe Budden was like letting him know, like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, don't be slipping up out here, boy.
Quality from a lyrical perspective compared to his previous work, and it just seemed like he was chasing radio hits. It was a little bit watered down. Coming back to it years later, even Joe's admitted that a lot of songs on there are classic, and it was a solid project, but at the time it was a big shift from what Drake was doing and a big dip in quality in terms of the rapping performances that we were getting from Drake on that album. So he was very critical of Views, and that sparked a whole beef and a back and forth between them, which prompted Drake to sneak diss Joe Budden on French Montana's song Shopping Spree, where he says, "Pump it up. I'm not a one-hit wonder. They know all my stuff." That's because Joe's one biggest song was Pump It Up. So Drake is basically saying, like, you know, you could have been this, but you're not. You're just a one-hit wonder. That's why you're there. Criticizing me while I'm on top. Whatever. Joe claps back with like 4 diss tracks, like tearing into Drake ruthlessly. Drake doesn't respond at all. Some of Drake fans actually went to Joe Budden's house and started throwing rocks at him, and Joe Budden was like chasing them down the street. That was a hilarious clip. You should definitely go check that out. But they have a long history going back and forth. Joe is an obvious Drake fan, but given their history, there is always that slight undertone of negativity whenever Joe is speaking on Drake or criticizing any of his work. As recently as Drake's last album, For All the Dogs, Joe was very critical on it, which, again, I was as well. Like, I kind of echo a lot of the sentiments that Joe shares on a lot of this stuff. Like, Drake just seemed like he was suffering a kind of midlife crisis on that album. He wasn't able to grow up. A lot of the sound sounded like he was just chasing the youth. Drake wasn't too happy about that.
Bro, it's a difference between letting somebody know something because you know that person and y'all have like a little type of relationship and you keeping it real with them versus just straight up like just dogging them. You know what I mean? Like just dogging them because, man, I'm going to just give y'all my opinion on it. Akademiks is glazing Drake, bro. Joe Buttons, I really do believe Joe Buttons is keeping it fair. I really do believe Joe Buttons is keeping it fair, and he's choosing a winner. because it's obvious that Kendrick won. You know what I mean? It's obvious. You can't just sit back, and be like, nah, Drake won. Well, really, he really didn't. Like, he's still saying that. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's what I think about it. This was a dope video done by Rapaholics. Y'all go subscribe to him. You know me, putting them good edits together. And yeah, I just wanted to react to that. Yeah. Y'all let me know what y'all think of the video. Big Kish signing out. I'm gone. We out. We out.